Welcome to Shuffle Source. I'm your host Brandon, and today we are back with another exciting Precon upgrade video. This time we will be upgrading the Silverquill Influence deck from Secrets of Strixhaven. Let's get into it. Really fast, before discussing the commander we will be using, let's quickly go over the Precon upgrade format that we use here at Shuffle Source. The first item to note is that we will either use the primary or the backup commander. Next, we have a cap of around $100 or less that we use when choosing the upgrades. We will be adding 10 cards and we will be removing 10 cards. And additionally, we add a few more upgrades that we like to call no budget options near the end of the video, and that's for people who either already have the cards or maybe have a little extra in their budget for continued upgrades. And lastly, we do use market value pricing provided by TCG Player at the time of recording, which is displayed at the bottom of the screen as we discuss the cards. So the commander we will be discussing today is Killian, Decisive Mentor. For 1 a white and a black, we have a 2/3 legendary creature human warlock that says, whenever an enchantment you control enters, tap up to 1 target creature and goad it. As a reminder for what goad is, until your next turn, that creature attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. Whenever 1 or more creatures that are enchanted by an aura you control attack, draw a card. So Killian is an aura-focused commander that rewards us for controlling the flow of combat while generating card advantage from enchanted creatures attacking. Whenever an enchantment enters under our control, we tap and goad a creature, forcing it to attack another player instead of us if able. This gives the deck a surprisingly political and controlling playstyle, where we can redirect pressure around the table while keeping ourselves safer. At least until they realize you are the real threat at the table. It's also very important to note that Killian's ability says whenever an enchantment enters, not whenever we cast one. That means effects that either create or let us cheat enchantments directly onto the battlefield will still trigger Killian. There are several cards in this deck, including some of the additions that we're adding, that take advantage of this interaction. We also do have some card draw stapled to our commander because whenever 1 or more creatures enchanted by auras we control attack, we draw a card. Importantly, that does not say creatures we control, which means we can enchant opponents' creatures as well and still benefit when they attack. This commander creates a very unique play pattern where our auras become our sources of card draw, combat manipulation, and value generation all at once. So when upgrading this deck, we want to focus on adding more powerful and efficient auras, stronger enchantment payoffs, and improving our removal so we can better control the board while keeping our engines running. A special thanks to all of our channel members. Your support truly means a lot and we greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to show your support and get access to some exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. You can also support the channel by liking, subscribing, and dropping a comment. Thank you, and now let's get back to the video. We've now made it to the first of our additions, and we are going to kick things off with Ethereal Armor. For 1 white, we have an enchantment aura that reads Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So we want to add this card because it is an extremely efficient aura that scales naturally as our board develops. For just 1 mana, it can quickly turn any creature into a legitimate threat since the power boost grows with each enchantment we control. It's also important to remember that auras attached to our opponent's creatures still belong to us. Some of the auras in this deck are actually meant to disrupt or weaken our opponent's creatures, but they still count towards Ethereal Armor's bonus because we control those enchantments. Giving first strike here can also be very relevant because it makes attacking and blocking much safer for the enchanted creature. And probably most importantly, it's a simple and very cheap way to trigger Killian's abilities. Next, we have Eye of Nidhogg. For 2 and a black, we have a legendary enchantment aura. It has Enchant Creature. Enchanted Creature is a black dragon with base power and toughness 4/2, has flying and death touch, and is goaded. When Eye of Nidhogg is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. So this is actually a great inclusion here because it does almost everything this deck wants to do in a single card. It's an aura, so that will immediately trigger Killian. It manipulates combat through goad, and it can almost turn any creature onto the battlefield into a dangerous problem for our opponents. Giving the creature flying and death touch makes it extremely threatening in combat, and since the creature is also goaded, it's forced to attack players other than us if able. That means we can turn an opponent's creature into a major threat against the rest of the table while keeping the pressure off of us. On top of that, it has built-in recursion, so whenever it goes to the graveyard, it comes back to our hand, letting us reuse it and continue to trigger Killian over and over again. And here's our next addition, Ghostly Dancers. For 3 colors and 2 white, we have a 2/5 5/5 creature spirit that has flying. When Ghostly Dancers enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, or unlock a locked door of a room you control. It also has Eerie. When an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 3/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So Ghostly Dancers is a really strong addition here because it gives us both enchantment recursion and a repeatable source of token generation. When it enters, we can return an enchantment from our graveyard back to our hand, which can help us recover key auras or other important enchantments that were removed earlier in the game. However, the real payoff for this card has to be that Eerie ability. Whenever another enchantment enters, not just cast, under our control, we get to create a 3/1 flying spirit token. Now, since this deck is constantly playing enchantments, that can generate a surprising amount of board presence for us. The massive amount of evasive 3/1 bodies here can really help us close out the game. And here we have Glasswing Grace for 3 and a hybrid white-black. We have an enchantment aura that says enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying and lifelink. It can also be played on its backside where it will enter tapped and can tap for either a white or black. So I really like the flexibility of this card here because it functions as both an aura and a land thanks to it being an MDFC. Early in the game, if we need mana consistency, we simply just play it as Aged Grace Chapel. But later on, when we already have enough lands, we can cast it for its aura instead. The aura side's also not too bad. Giving +2/+2 flying and lifelink can turn almost any creature into a meaningful evasive threat while also helping us stabilize our life total. Now, it is true that if we play it as a land, it will always enter tapped, but we're swapping out another land that always enters tapped and doesn't provide any other additional utility. This card at least gives us value and flexibility on either side. Next up, we have Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It is a legendary land that taps for a colorless. You can also pay 1 and a white and tap it. Put target enchantment card from your graveyard on the top of your library. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is an excellent utility land for this deck because it gives us repeatable enchantment recursion without us taking up a spell slot. Since so much of our strategy revolves around enchantments and auras, being able to continually recover important pieces from the graveyard is extremely valuable to us over the course of a game. If our opponents remove one of our key enchantments, we can simply put it back on top of our library and draw it again, which can help keep our engine going. And lastly, because it is a land, the recursion is much harder for our opponents to interact with compared to if it was attached to a creature, for example. And here we have Nurgle's Rot. For 1 black, we have an enchantment aura that says enchant creature an opponent controls. When enchanted creature dies, return Nurgle's Rot to its owner's hand, and you create a 1/3 black demon creature token named Plaguebearer of Nurgle. So this card is an awesome aura to include in this deck because it's the exact type of disruptive value generation that this deck is looking for. So for just 1 mana, we get to enchant an opponent's creature, immediately triggering Killian's Tap and Goad ability, which hopefully we can then use for creatures to attack into bad situations for them to die right away and get our card back. Not only does the aura come back to our hand when the creature dies, but it also gives us a 1/3 demon token. The repeatability that this card gives us is extremely important here because every time we want to recast it, we will re-trigger Killian's Tap and Goad ability while also continuing to fuel our draw engine. Lastly, I think the other benefit here is that this is another nice way for this deck to create creature tokens, which definitely helps protect us from other ungoated creatures that our opponents might have. I do want to call out here that I know that this card has become pretty expensive, so if you're trying to upgrade this deck on more of a budget, a decent replacement upgrade would be something like All That Glitters. Now, we're definitely not going to want to play that on our opponent's creatures necessarily, but it's a great way to buff our own to help us close out the game. Next up, we have Ondu Spirit Dancer for 4 and a white. We have a 3/3 creature core cleric. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, you may create a token that's a copy of it. Do this only once each turn. Now, this is a great payoff card for this deck because it can start doubling our enchantments that enter the battlefield. Depending on what we copy, this can become extremely threatening very quickly. Copying powerful auras, value enchantments, or disruptive enchantments can create a massive amount of pressure and card advantage over time. This is also extremely powerful here because Killian only cares about enchantments entering the battlefield, not just being cast, so we can get extra tap and goad effects, which in turn can net us some extra card draw if we have those creatures enchanted. And here we have Path to Exile. For 1 white, we have an instant that says exile target creature. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So this deck was really missing some of the white removal staples, and in my opinion, every deck that's running white should absolutely be playing Path to Exile. For just 1 mana at instant speed, we can exile almost any problematic creature outright. Yes, the opponent gets a basic land, but the trade is almost always worth it for how efficient and unconditional this removal really is. This deck especially appreciates cheap interaction because we still want to be able to spend most of our mana advancing our enchantment engine and developing our own board. And honestly, if you have access to it, you should probably be running Swords to Plowshare as well, since it's another one of the best white removal spells ever printed. And our next addition is Retether. For 3 colors and a white, we have a sorcery that says, return each aura card from your graveyard to play. Only creatures can be enchanted this way. Aura cards that can't enchant a creature in play remain in your graveyard. Retether is an incredibly powerful recursion card for this deck because it can bring back a massive number of auras all at once. If our board gets wiped or several of our auras end up in the graveyard over the course of the game, this can completely rebuild our board in a single spell. And since all of those auras are entering the battlefield again, they also re-trigger Killian's enchantment enters ability multiple times, meaning we have the ability to tap and goad a lot of creatures. So depending on how many and which auras we're able to bring back with this card, it can really change the course of the game. And here we have Sigil of the Empty Throne. For 3 colors and 2 white, we have an enchantment that says, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. So this card is an amazing enchantment payoff and another strong way for this deck to actually close out the games with our opponents. Every time we cast an enchantment, we're going to get to create a 4/4 flying angel token, which can snowball very quickly into a very threatening board. Since this deck is constantly casting auras and enchantments, Sigil can generate a steady stream of evasive threats throughout the game while we continue advancing our normal game plan. That token generation really helps solve one of the weaknesses I felt this Precon had, which is sometimes it struggles to actually finish the game even after generating a lot of value and having our opponents take each other out. A board full of 4/4 flying angels definitely helps solve that problem. And because Sigil is an enchantment itself, it will immediately synergize with the rest of the deck the moment it enters. We've now made it to the removals portion of the video, and we are going to kick it off with Chains of Custody. For 2 colorless and 1 white, we have an enchantment aura that says enchant creature you control. When this aura enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this aura leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature has ward 2. So this is an okay card, but it just ends up being somewhat redundant because the deck already includes Sheltered by Ghosts, which is simply a stronger version of what this card is trying to do. So both cards do provide removal attached to an aura while also protecting a creature, but Sheltered by Ghosts just offers a better overall package and a much more impactful utility. Since we only have so many card slots available in our deck, we'd much rather keep the stronger version and free this slot up for cards that add new effects or improve the deck in different ways instead of running multiple similar effects at a lower power level. Our next removal is Combat Calligrapher. For 3 colors and a white, we have a 3/3 creature bird cleric that has flying. Inklings can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, that attacking player creates a tapped 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying that's attacking that opponent. So this is a fun political card, but it doesn't really synergize with the core enchantment strategy of this deck. While it does encourage opponents to attack each other, it's not actually interacting with our aura engine, enchantment payoffs, or any of Killian's card draw. Also, it's important to note that this just incentivizes our opponents. It doesn't really protect us. Opponents can still simply attack us with the other creatures, so the defensive aspect is somewhat limited. Next up, we have Eldrazi Conscription. For 8 mana, we have a Kindred enchantment Eldrazi aura that says enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +10/+10 and has trample Trample, and Annihilator too. Whenever it attacks, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents of their choice. So Eldrazi Conscription is obviously a very powerful aura, however it is very expensive and very risky for what this deck is trying to do. Spending 8 mana to load everything onto one creature is a huge investment, and a lot of the time that creature is simply just going to get removed immediately. This card also pushes our deck to more of a traditional Voltron strategy, where we try to make one giant creature and eliminate players through combat, but that's not really the core identity of this deck. So the payoff is definitely scary if we can get it to stick, but the risk and mana investment are just too high compared to the other things that we would like to be doing. Next on the chopping block, we have Intermediate Chirography. For 1 and a black, we have an enchantment class that says when this class enters, create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. You can then level it to level 2 for 1 and a black. Whenever you lose life for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then at level 3 for 2 and a black, we have, at the beginning of each end step, if a modified creature died under your control this turn, create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. So this is one of the new cards. I do think is an interesting card, but it ends up being very slow and disconnected really from the main game plan of the deck. Now, while it does have the ability to create some flying tokens over time, we have to spend additional mana across multiple turns before the card really starts doing anything meaningful. Again, this deck is really much more focused on enchantment-based combat manipulation and getting value from auras. Now, while the token creature generation is nice, we actually added stronger and more efficient ways to generate evasive creatures that tie in much better with our enchantment game plan. And here we have Keen Duelist. For 1 and a black, we have a 2/2 creature human wizard that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card you revealed into your hand. So Keen Duelist is an okay card draw creature, but it's not really synergizing with what the deck is trying to do. Now, card draw is always nice, but it's tied to a symmetrical effect that also gives our opponent additional cards, which also keeps them on pace with us. It also can be somewhat risky because the deck does have a few higher mana valued cards, meaning we can occasionally take a pretty large amount of damage ourselves from the effect. And honestly, this deck does a pretty good job with card draw, especially with our commander having card draw stapled onto him. And here we have Nils, Discipline Enforcer. For 2 and a white, we have a 2/2 legendary creature human cleric that says at the beginning of your end step, for each player, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature that player controls. Each creature with 1 or more counters on it can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless its controller pays X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. So again, this is another political sort of card, but it doesn't really fit our plan at all. While it can discourage some attacks towards us, I find it really just doesn't do it that well. I also don't like that we're giving opponents permanent value in the form of +1/+1 counters. They can simply just remove Nils later and still keep all of the counters and the board development that we helped them build. And really in practice, the protection effect is less reliable than it looks. If an opponent really wants to attack us, they can just pay the extra mana anyway. Honestly, this card only really becomes usable, in my opinion, if you're playing against dedicated counter decks, but there's never any guarantee that you'll be playing against that in every game. Next up, we have Rafine's Guidance. For 1 white, we have an enchantment aura that says enchanted creature gets +1/+1. You may cast this card from your graveyard by paying 2 and a white rather than paying its mana cost. So this card is just too low impact compared to the other enchantment auras that we're running here and adding to the deck. Simple +1/+1 boost doesn't really do enough to justify our card slot here. The recursion from the graveyard is nice, and it does technically help re-trigger Killian multiple times over the course of the game, but the overall payoff for the card is really small compared to the amount of mana we invested. We would much rather use this slot for an aura that provides stronger combat manipulation, more meaningful utility, or by pumping up our creature much more. Next on the chopping block, we have Secret Rendezvous. For 1 and 2 white, we have a sorcery that says you and target opponent each draw 3 cards. So this card does look political on paper, but in practice, all we're really doing is giving our opponent's card advantage. Yes, this deck sort of does have some sort of political elements to it, but honestly, you'll find out after playing a few times that this deck actually tends to create more enemies than friends once people realize how disruptive you can become. Because of that, I don't think we should expect opponents to reward us for helping them draw cards. A lot of the time, we're simply just giving another player more resources to deal with us later. Now, drawing 3 cards is always nice, but there are plenty of other ways for this deck to generate card advantage without also refilling our opponent's hand. And our next removal is Sunlit Marsh, which is a land plane swamp that you can tap for either white or a black, and it always enters tapped. So this card is a very easy cut because it always enters tapped and doesn't provide any other additional utility beyond it color fixing. We're essentially making a direct swap here for Glasswing Grace, which can also function as a land when needed early, or later in the game become an aura that actually synergizes with the rest of the deck. And we now made it to the last of our removals. We have Tomic Wielder of Law. For 1 white and a black, we have a 2/4 legendary creature Human Advisor that has affinity for planeswalkers. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each planeswalker you control. It also has flying, vigilance, and whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So this was honestly one of the first cuts that I made to the deck. The affinity for planeswalker ability here is really irrelevant to us and can pretty much just be flavor text. The attack trigger here is also more reactive than proactive. It only works if our opponents attack us with multiple creatures, and while you may think 3 life and you drawing a card is enough of a deterrent from them to attack you, it's really not. And lastly, and probably most importantly, this card has nothing to do with our enchantment strategy. Hey everyone, I wanted to take a moment to give a huge shout out to our partner, the Mighty Meeple. If you're in or visiting the Concord, North Carolina area, the Mighty Meeple is the local game store to check out. Their team is friendly, knowledgeable, and always ready to help you find exactly what you need. From Magic and board games to minis and more, whatever your hobby, they've got you covered. And even if you're not local, no problem. You can shop for Magic singles and other TCGs at mightymeeple.com. Use promo code SHUFFLE for 5% off your order. Thank you. And now let's get back to the video. We've now made it to the no budget options portion of the video, and we are going to kick it off with Enlightened Tutor. For 1 white, we have an instant that says search your library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. So Enlightened Tutor is an excellent addition because it gives the deck a huge amount of consistency for just 1 mana. Since so much of our strategy revolves around key enchantments and aura payoffs, being able to search for exactly the piece we need is extremely valuable. And it being at instant speed also means we can cast it at the end of our opponent's turn and set up our next card draw. This just ends up being one of the most efficient ways to improve the consistency and reliability of the deck's plan. And our next no budget option is Sigarda's Aid. For 1 white, we have an enchantment that says you may cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. So Sigarda's Aid is so good here because it gives all of our auras flash, which adds a huge amount of flexibility to the deck. Being able to cast our auras at instant speed lets us play much more reactively and politically. We can wait until combat, respond to removal, surprise our opponents with buffs, or decide at the last second which creature we really want to enchant. It also works incredibly well with Killian because casting enchantments during our opponent's turn still triggers the tap and goat ability. That means we can continue to manipulate combat and influence the table even when it's not our turn. And here we have the last of our no budget options. We have Teferi's Protection for 2 and a white. We have an instant that says until your next turn, your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. While they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. They phase in before you untap during your untap step, and then you exile Teferi's Protection. So Teferi's Protection is one of the best protection spells ever printed. And this deck really benefits from having ways to protect all of the value that we build up over the course of a game. Since we spend so much time and resources developing our board with enchantments and auras, a single board wipe can set us back pretty hard. Teferi's Protection essentially lets us ignore that problem for a turn by phasing out all of our permanents while also protecting our life total. So this card can save us from board wipes, protect us from lethal attacks, or even let us survive explosive turns from opponents while all keeping our resources intact. And there you have it. After upgrading this deck, we have a final upgrade cost of $73.72. This total does not include the no budget options that we covered. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the Silverquill Influence Precon. Do you agree with the additions and the removals? And as always, until next time, thank you for watching.